Hello everyone, my name is Neha Sharma. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Axis Institute of Technology and Management. Today, I am going to deliver a lecture on Introduction to Software Engineering. The topics that we are going to discuss today are: what is software engineering? What is the IEEE definition of software engineering? What is software crisis? What are the factors that leads to the software crisis? And in the end, we are going to discuss what is exploratory style of software development. Now, coming to the first slide, here as you can see, there is a difference between software versus program. Many students are confused in these two terms and they use the term interchangeably, but these two terms are different. So let us see how these two terms are different. First is program. Now program is just a piece of code. Piece of code means it is line of code, set of instructions. So program is simply a set of instructions that are written in some programming language. A program can be in any language. It can be in C, C++, Java, Python, any language. Okay. Now what is software? Software is much more than just a program. Software is a collection of set of programs. It contains a set of programs plus there are set of related documents. Now, what kind of documents are there in software? Let us see. In software, there are SRS, that is software requirement specification document, test report, user manual, design documents, and many more documents. So in software, there are set of programs, more than one program, and there are set of related documents also. If I draw the Venn diagram for this, then I can say that software is a superset of a program. So here, this is program and this is software. Program is just a small part of a software. Software is a superset. Now, moving to the next slide, we'll see what is software engineering. Now, I have explained what is software. Now, we'll come to the term engineering. What is engineering? When we apply a systematic, disciplined approach to develop a software, that is called a engineering approach to develop the software. So, if I want to develop a software, it's my choice that I can develop the software using the engineering approach or I can develop the software without using the engineering approach. If I am using the engineering approach to develop a software, then it is called software engineering. So, in short, we can say what is software engineering? That when we use the engineering approach to develop a software, then that is known as software engineering. Now the question arises, then why we use the engineering approach? Is there a need to use an engineering approach? Yes, there is. Now, let us see the example that why we need the engineering approach to develop the software. For example, if I ask you all, can you build a wall? Now, if you don't have any engineering knowledge, can you build a wall? So, if I ask you to build a small wall, then every one of us can build a small wall using a simple basic intuition that we need some bricks, we need some cement, and we need some tools. Each one of us can build this small wall. But if I ask you, can you build this big building? Now, there many of us will fail, will not be able to build such a big building without using the engineering technology. Similarly, the same answer lies here. If we have to write a small program, small software, if we have to build a small software in which the program consists of only 10s or 20 of lines of code, then we all can do it without using the engineering approach. But if I ask you to write a program, to write a software that consists of tens of thousands of lines, can you write that program? Can you write that software without using the engineering approach? No. Even if you will write, you will fail in the end. So for that we need the engineering approach to develop the software. Now, engineering approach is just a systematic collection of past experience. From the past, we learn the technologies, we learn the methodologies, we have the guidelines, we have the thumb rules. We use all of them to build the software. We use the past experience to build the new software. That is software engineering. Now, according to IEEE, the definition that is given by the IEEE is software engineering is the application of systematic, disciplined, quantifiable approach to the development, operation and maintenance of software. That is, if I want to develop a software and I am using a systematic approach, I am using a disciplined approach, I am using a quantifiable approach, all this approach is called engineering approach. That means I am using engineering approach to build that software. That is the IEEE definition. Now we'll come to next topic, that is what is software crisis. Now, software crisis is the shortage of software, shortage of good quality of software. Now, why there are shortage of good quality of software? There are many reasons that why we have lack of good softwares. That is known as software crisis. Now, it is often the case that the software products, they fail to meet the user requirement. When a software fails to meet a user requirement, we say this is a software crisis. If I am developing a software, client has given me some requirement and I make the software and I deliver the software to the customer and customer is not satisfied with the software, then this is the software crisis. He is not satisfied with the software. It means the software has failed to meet the customer's requirement. If I make the software that is expensive, that exceeds its budget, then this is also a software crisis. If we build a software that is difficult to alter, as you know, we have so many apps, we have so many softwares, and if the software is such that we are not able to change it, we are not going to alter it, we are not going to debug it, then what is the use of this software? Nobody is going to like that software, nobody is going to purchase that software. That is also a software crisis. Then if we deliver the software late, if we exceed the time limit, that is also a software crisis. And if we use the resources non-optimally, we don't use the resource optimally, that is also a software crisis. We have to make a software in such a way that resources are used optimally. Now here you can see this chart. Here you can see that this is hardware cost to the software cost. In 1960s, the hardware was very costly, but nowadays the hardware cost is reduced and software cost is increased. If you see in the past, if we have to purchase a computer cost is so much in the past, but nowadays we can get a decent computer at 45,000, at the cost of 45,000. So we can get even a mobile phone, good mobile phone at the cost of 10,000. We can get electronics at a very cheap rate today. So hardware cost is reduced nowadays, but the cost of software is increased nowadays. So this is one reason of the software crisis. Now look at this Standish Group report. According to the Standish Group report, out of the 100 softwares that are developed, only 28% are successful. See, this is very less number. Out of 100, only 28 are successful. Only 28 are successful, rest are cancelled, rest are failed. Why? Rest are failed due to software crisis. They are failed, 49% of the softwares failed. Why? Because they are delayed, they exceed their time limit, or the cost overrun. Because of the cost overrun, they are expensive, that's why they fail. 23% are cancelled. They are unable to meet the user requirement, they are cancelled. So you can see from here that there is so much of crisis, that out of 100 software, only 28% are able to succeed. Now we'll see what are the factors. what factor contribute to this software crisis? What leads to software crisis? First is larger problems. Earlier the programs that we are going to develop is small programs, small software, small projects, but nowadays we have larger problems. Larger programs means, for example, we have software for each and everything nowadays. We have software for teaching, we have software for online booking, we have software for air ticketing. So we have software for each and everything, and the number of users that are using them are also more. So scalability has also increased. So as the problem is larger, this is the factor that leads to the software crisis. Next is poor project management. Software is not developed by only one person. A team, whole team works on the software to build that software. So if there is not a proper management of software, project management, then this will lead to software crisis. The most important point that I would like to point here is that lack of adequate training in software engineering. So if the persons that are working on that software, they are not trained in software engineering, then what will happen? The software will fail. So the persons should be trained, well equipped with the knowledge of software engineering to make that software successful. Next is increasing skill shortage. We have so many persons, team members that may not have the skill that is required to develop that software. So skills shortage is also a reason. Last is low productivity improvement. If the productivity is low, then that software leads to the software crisis. Now the next topic that we are going to talk today is the exploratory software development. What is exploratory software development? Now exploratory software development is also known as build and fix style. So you can use both the terms interchangeably. Either you can call it exploratory software development or you can call it build and fix style. Now what is build and fix style? So if you don't know software engineering and you are writing just you are writing a program and you are building a software, that is just a build and fix style. So build and fix style is that you don't know the techniques, you don't know the methodologies, you simply write a program, you just write a dirty program, means you write an initial code and you test it. And if you get when you test it, if you get the bugs, you just remove the bugs and keep on testing it until the bugs are removed. So I can say that build and fix style is the style that most of the students use in their initial programming year. A novice programmer will use build and fix style. It is similar to how student develops programming. So coming to the next slide, this is the diagram. Now I will explain with the help of diagram what is build and fix style. Here a programmer writes an initial code, programmer will do a initial coding, then he will test that software. In the testing, if he finds any bug, he will fix that bug and again he will test the software, again he will test. Now if he gets the bug, he will again fix it and he will keep on doing this until and unless all the bugs are removed. This is known as exploratory style or build and fix style. Now you will say, what is wrong in this? Yes, there is something wrong in this. What is wrong in this is that if you have a small project, if you are working on a very small project, then it is okay for you that if you have 10 or 20 line of code, it is easy for you that you will keep on looping, keep on testing, keep on fixing, keep on testing, keep on fixing. It is okay when you have a small code. But if you have a big code, if you have a code that have tens of thousands of lines, then will you be able to do it again and again? Will you be able to keep on testing again and again? That will consume lot of time, lot of effort will be required, the cost will be so much in that. So this is okay if the software size is less, but if the software size is big, then it is not okay. This style is not okay. Let us see this diagram. This diagram explains what I am trying to convey to you is that what is wrong with exploratory style. What is wrong here? Why this exploratory style is not good? See, the reason is, you can see as the program size increases, as the program size is increasing, when the program size is small, then it's okay. But as the program size here is increasing, the time and the cost, the effort is increasing exponentially. See, it is increasing exponentially here. Whenever something is increasing exponentially, there is increase in exponent, then this is not good, because effort is increasing exponentially. When the effort is increasing exponentially, it means the time will increase exponentially, the cost will increase exponentially, as the size of program will increase exponentially. If we have to do this work with the help of a machine, then the ideal graph would be linear. Ideal graph would be linear. So linear is the ideal graph. And in exploratory, we are getting exponential graph. So our aim is to get the linear. So with the help of, if we apply software engineering approach, then we can get a graph that is near to this linear. So our aim is to get a graph that as the problem size increasing, the effort should also increase linearly. Our aim is this. But in exploratory, we are getting exponential increase. If we use the software engineering approach, we can get near to this linear graph. That's why we apply software engineering to this approach. Next is what is wrong with exploratory style. As I have already told you, that there is exponential growth of effort, cost and time. This is wrong with this. As this problem sizing is increasing, the effort is growing exponentially. This is the problem in this approach. Another problem besides this, another problem also we have, that the code is unmaintainable. It is not unmaintainable. That's why this is not a good approach. Now we have to find the answer, that why is this happening? Why this graph is exponential here? What is the reason? We have seen the problem, that the problem is that it is growing exponentially. This is the problem. Now we have to answer the question that why is this happening? Why this approach breaks down when the size of software becomes large. Okay, so when the size of software become large, why this approach fails? This is the reason that we are going to find out now. So the reason is because of cognition mechanism. We can explain that why this is happening. Whatever happens for a reason. Now the reason that why this is exponential growth is based on human cognition mechanism. Now what is human cognition mechanism? Human cognition mechanism means, according to the Miller, a famous researcher, he has told us that human brain consists of two parts. Human brain, human memory, it consists of two parts. One is short-term memory and another is long-term memory. Short-term memory, as the name you know, that it can hold only small amount of data. Long-term memory, as the name, long-term, it can hold the data for long time span. Suppose I ask you that it is 10 AM now. Now you have to tell me how many hours are remaining in a day. So what will you do? That from your short-term memory, so from the short-term memory you will see that it is 10 AM now, and from your long-term memory you will recall that in one day there are 24 hours, and you will subtract them and you will get the answer. So here, as you can see in this diagram, there are two parts in our brain. This is the schematic representation of a brain, how our brain has two parts. One is short-term memory, one is long-term memory. So you can see here the size of short-term memory is small. It can hold only small number of items, and the size of long-term memory is big. So it can hold more number of items in it. That's why what happens is that in short-term memory, the whatever item we store in short-term memory, it get lost. Why it get lost? It get decay due to the time, either due to the time or by the replacement of new information. Information replaces the old item in the short-term memory. That's why we forget the items that are stored in short-term memory. So we can store an item in short-term memory for few seconds only. After that, we will forget that. For example, if I ask you to dial a number, phone number that consists of 10 digits, suppose you have dialed it, and after few seconds I ask you what number you dialed just now, you will not be able to remember that. Why? Because it is stored just only for few seconds. After few seconds you will forget it. If you want to remember it, then you will have to keep on recalling it. If you will keep on recalling it, then you can store it for longer time. Now what is an item that we are talking about here? What is an item? Now item is any set of related information is called as item. For example, I have to store a character, a digit, or a word, or a sentence, a story, or even a picture. All these are items that we store in our memory. Now what is chunking? There is an important concept that is called chunking. What is chunking? Chunking means each item normally occupies one place. Okay, so for each item we require one place. Suppose I have to store a number 1. For storing a number 1, I will require one place. Okay, in one place I will store 1. I have another number 2, I will store it another place 2. So each item will require one place to store. Now chunking is a concept that chunking applies. What chunking allows us? It allows us to store several different items together. Means we are able to relate several different items, and we are able to store several different items into one place only. Let us see the example. This will be very clear with the next example. Suppose if I ask you to remember this number. See this number. So it will be very difficult for you to remember this number. How we can now, what chunking will do is, chunking will store it in octal form. In octal form, what it has done is that all these 3 will require 3 places to store, but chunking will relate them and will make a number 6 out of that. So instead of requiring 3 places to store this number, now we will require only 1 place to store this number. This is chunking, that it relates different items and requires only 1 place to store several items. This is called chunking. Now it is easy to remember 6251. Every one of us can remember 6251 very easily, but if I ask you to remember this whole number, it will be very difficult. So chunking allows us to store that number in one place, several different items. Now there is one number 7 that is called magical number. So you must know magical number 7. In several interviews also this is asked, what is magical number 7 in software engineering or human cognition. So magical number 7 means that according to the research, it is proven that we can remember up to 7 digits of number, and after 7 digits of number we will forget. So magical number 7 is that if we have a software, if we have a program that consists of only 7 digits, it will be easier for us to remember that. If we have a program that has more than 7 parameter, more than 7 variables, then it will be very difficult for us to manage that, to us to remember it. So that is magical number 7. This is the references. Rajiv Mal, Fundamentals of Software Engineering book. This is a very good book on software engineering. You can follow this book. Now in the next lecture, we'll continue with this topic and we'll see that how this human cognition is related to the program and how it affects the software engineering. Thanks.